Okay, here we have Dig It. And Dig It is a 16 three-hand, 9-year-old thoroughbred gelding by Gold Digger's Boy. And I'm not familiar with that sire, but that is a jumpstart line, which of course we're all very familiar with. And he only had 4 career starts. His last start was in February of 2021 and his career starts were all extremely unsuccessful. I think he made a net under $1,000 on the racetrack. So quite a horrible racehorse. So it absolutely made sense that he finished racing after only 4 starts. And after he came off the track, my sister-in-law bought him very shortly after. So she's had him since sometime in 2021, so about 5 years now. And she got him when she was a teenager. And so he was fully produced by a junior rider without a lot of, he was not in any sort of a professionals training program ever. She produced him completely on her own at my husband's parents' family farm, which is near Annapolis, which is where he is. And so completely produced by a junior rider. Now, in the last couple of years, that now teenager is now in her early 20s, and she now has a full-time job. She has a full-time boyfriend, and so her interests have just sort of waned a little bit in horses. And so that's left Chicky, they call him Chicky, here without a job for the last 2 years, basically. So what you're seeing today is my mother-in-law, Charlene, brought Chicky over. He literally hauled in 30 minutes before we took this video. He's never been to my farm before. He's literally not been ridden since September, I believe. So it's been about 5 months since he's been ridden, and he hauled to a new farm where he's never been before. And it's, 30 degrees on a freezing winter day. I did not lunge this horse. I walked him once around the ring before I got on, and I hopped on, and he was fantastic. So I know that it looks like a little bit rough around the edges here, and that's because it is. He's not been in any sort of regular riding program in 2 years. Over the last 2 years, he's done a handful of trail rides. Actually, my husband Billy's gone trail riding with him a couple of times over the last couple of years and can attest to the fact that he goes very nicely western also. He crosses bridges and creeks and all kinds of stuff. He's excellent on the trails. But I really don't see this horse as a trail horse. I mean, obviously that's a lovely thing to be able to do with them, but this is a really athletic, talented, nice, big moving, balanced horse. And I really think that he will excel in some sort of sport horse career. Now, when my sister-in-law was riding him regularly and bringing him along, she did some local jumpers with him, and I have some video of that, and that's attached to his playlist in my YouTube channel. I believe she did the .8 jumpers with him. And he was excellent. I've watched the videos, and again, they're on my YouTube. The horse is a very, very talented, athletic, eager jumping horse, and without any professional training. So I think very highly of him. He definitely wants to do the job. He's keen to do it. He enjoys it. This is not a horse that should be just sort of sitting in a field going on 1 or 2 trail rides a year. This is a horse that really excels with work and wants something to do, and he really deserves that. But I have to say that I think extremely highly of him. When we brought him out to the ring, I said to my mother-in-law, I said, do you think I should stick him on the lunge line before I get on? Because we had just been discussing how no one had ridden him since September. And she was like, no, he'll be fine. So I just hopped on. I trusted her. I hopped on, and he couldn't have been better. So really solid through and through type of horse. So Chicky, I mean, obviously he's a beautiful moving horse. He has the lovely trot. His canter is exceptional. To me, the canter is really his premier gait. Super balanced and uphill and active. So this little head tossing thing he's doing here, that's as wild as he gets. And I think that, since it's been so long since his last ride and he's at a new place with a new rider, I think I can truly, honestly attest to the fact that a little head toss is as wild as this horse will get. So really, in the scheme of things, that is not wild at all. And he's just not been doing this. And over the last couple of years, he's been going on trail rides, ridden Western. He's certainly not been asked to, sort of start to come through and sit down and use himself like this. So he handled all of this sort of pressure, if you will, extremely well. He really naturally makes a great shape. He's actually really light in his mouth. The head tossing is just a little bit of playfulness and a little bit of, wow, I haven't been asked to do this in a very long time. Please remind me. But I mean, obviously he settles extremely nicely. into whatever it is you're asking him to do. He is super comfortable. He has a really ground covering step. I actually have to say, I had no idea what to expect. Chicky's been with my in-laws family for 5 years, but somehow I've actually never met him. My husband's met him many times over the last couple of years, but for whatever reason, I'm usually not going on the Western trail riding adventures. So this was actually my first time meeting him, and I had no idea what to expect. And I guess I just sort of didn't want to be disappointed. So my expectations were low because I just had no idea. And I got on him and I picked up the trot and I felt this incredible movement, such a great hind leg. And I really just I was like, wow, this is awesome. I was hoping just to sort of survive a ride. And instead I really got to play around on a really talented horse. So little things about Chicky. He's very soft in his mouth. In this ride, I have him in a titanium egg butt snaffle. And if I was going to ride him again, I would switch him to a soft rubber straight bar. The really light titanium was even just a little bit too much. And it sort of, as he settled into work, if anything, he wanted to be a little bit too low and a little bit too round. So I was encouraging him to bring his pole up. And I think a soft straight bar would really help with that. He is actually, his naturally easier direction, or his naturally more easier bend, is to the right. So to the left here, we're staying on a circle because I'm trying to use the curve, the bend of the circle to help get him to naturally sort of find a little bit of flexion to the left. And of course, these are big asks because this horse has not been ridden in months. He hasn't been ridden regularly in years. So I'm really, I'm asking a lot. And if a horse was ever going to tell you to go piss off because they've not been worked and this is a little bit unfair and a lot to ask, I think that would be totally understandable and I would not hold it against him. But he did not do that in any way, shape, or form. He tried to answer every single question I threw at him. He actually does a beautiful canter transition. The head toss is just a little bit of playfulness, and then it's a little bit of me sort of sitting down and back and saying, hey, you have a fabulous hind leg. I want you to sit down and put some weight on it, and just having a little bit of discussion about what that balance looks like. But really, it's just a blip, and then he settles into this beautiful canter. The canter is equally gorgeous on each lead. And it's no wonder that the horse is an naturally athletic, gifted jumper with a canter like this. So one thing about Chicky that I should mention is, he has no injuries, no vices. He has good feet, clean legs. I mean, they look totally cold and absolutely nothing to remark about. There's not even a splint on this horse's legs. He did 4 years ago, he had colic surgery. And I actually thought, until a couple of months ago, I wasn't sure how big of a deal that was with marketing horses. But interestingly, a month or so ago, I sold a horse who I'd had for quite a while, who I had no idea had colic surgery about 4 years ago himself. And at the vetting, the vet found, a little bit of scar tissue that, of course, indicated that he had colic surgery at some point. And, I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure what that meant for the buyer or for him being on the market. Anyway, long story short, I talked to a bunch of vets. The buyer talked to a bunch of vets. And we're not talking about Joe Schmo vets. We're talking about really, really reputable, well-known sport horse vets. And basically the general consensus was that this is not a big deal. And you don't have to take my word for it. I strongly recommend, if you're interested in this horse, seek out a really well-educated vet that comes from a clinic where, they see a lot of this. You don't want to ask a vet who doesn't see a lot of cases. You want to ask somebody who in the last several years has experienced a lot of colic surgeries and has been able to track them and see what their prognosis is like. The feedback that I got from the vets that I talked to and from the buyer's vets was basically, this is no big deal. In the last 5 or 10 years, the improvements to how they do colic surgery have been humongous. And horses that have a successful colic surgery go on to live totally normal, healthy lives. And it's not like this happened, 6 months ago. It's been 4 years since he had his colic surgery. And obviously he is totally fine. And for whatever it's worth to anybody, I'm not an expert on this, but nothing had to be redacted. Nothing, no parts of his intestines were removed. I guess he had a gas colic, and they just sort of went in to be extra cautious and sort of put everything back where it was supposed to be, but nothing was actually taken out or reconfigured. And it healed up beautifully. I can't even see a scar. I'm sure you can probably feel a little bit of scar tissue, or at least a good vet could, but there's nothing visual. And he has been a picture of health since. So I don't think it's a big deal. However, his price is definitely a little bit less than it would be had he not had that, because of course some people are going to be dead set against it, and that's totally fine. So the price is definitely a little bit reduced. But now that I also know, I've had my own horse who has had colic surgery. Hilariously, I had no idea about that until I went to sell him. It doesn't scare me at all. I would buy a personal horse who'd had successful colic surgery without any worry whatsoever. And of course, now every time I see any vet, which is all the time, I'm asking them about it. And I've yet to talk to a vet who's told me that it's any sort of big deal or that they would be concerned about it. So anyway, he's not jumped in 2 years, so I just wanted to sort of play around over some little polls and fillers to see what he thought about things, and he is so game. He clearly loves to jump. He has all the right instincts. And so here he is standing on cross ties. Keep in mind, when we were doing this, he just showed up at my farm 15 minutes earlier, having never had been here, not done anything in months, and he literally just stood like this on cross ties. He was so excellent. So I was very impressed with him. This is a really lovely horse.